In October 1347, the Sicilian port of Messina waited under a warm autumn sun. Out on the water, 12 Genoese merchant ships drifted silently into the harbor. On the docks, workers called out, but no reply came. The sails were down. The decks were eerily still. A strange quiet hung over the fleet. When officials finally boarded, they discovered a scene that defied belief. The crews were either dead or dying, their bodies marked by grotesque black swellings. The city had just received a catalyst for catastrophe, the first spark of a plague that would become known as the Black Death, a force that would reshape Europe in less than 5 years. Historians and scientists now trace its origins to Central Asia, near Lake Issyk. In the early 1330s, unseen climate shifts had forced rodent populations into new territories, allowing the bacterium Yersinia pestis to break free from its ancient home. At the same time, the Silk Road was humming with activity. Caravans, armies, and merchants moved in a relentless flow, creating the perfect network for a microscopic killer to travel. The stage was set for a disaster on a continental scale. By 1346, the plague had reached the edge of Europe. The port city of Kaffa on the Crimean Peninsula, a Genoese trading hub, was under siege by the Mongol Golden Horde. As the plague ravaged the besieging army, their leader reportedly ordered the bodies of the dead to be catapulted over the city walls. It was one of history's earliest and most horrifying acts of biological warfare. Genoese traders fleeing Kaffa carried more than just their goods. They carried the invisible harbinger of death with them, along the vital Mediterranean trade routes. The very waves of commerce that had fueled Europe's wealth now delivered an unstoppable contagion. Sicily felt the first tremors, but the shockwaves moved faster than any medieval authority could comprehend. From Sicily, the plague leaped to mainland Italy. The great port cities of Genoa and Venice, hubs of global trade, became gateways for its spread. Wheat in Mons, it was in Marseille, France. The network of roads, rivers, and sea lanes that had connected cultures now connected them to catastrophe. Cities that had once thrived on innovation and commerce were plunged into chaos. In Florence, one of the wealthiest cities in Europe, the plague was devastating. The writer Giovanni Boccaccio described a society unraveling. People abandoned their families, their homes, and their duties. The city's governing bodies vanished, leaving council chambers empty and silent. The great banking houses and merchant guilds that had financed kings and popes shut their doors. Universities paused their lectures, and the familiar rhythm of European life came to a grinding halt. Northern Italy endured months of horror, but the wave was still moving. By 1348, it reached Paris and then crossed the English Channel to strike London. In these dense, unsanitary medieval cities, the disease spread like wildfire. The social fabric trembled and then tore. Agriculture stalled as fields went untended. Grain rotted where it lay, and the specter of famine followed in the plague's wake. The pathogen itself was terrifyingly efficient. It struck in multiple ways. The bubonic form, transmitted by fleas on rats, caused the infamous swollen lymph nodes in the groin, neck, and armpits. The pneumonic form attacked the lungs and spread through the air, from person to person, with a cough or a sneeze. And the septicemic form infected the bloodstream, causing death so quickly that victims often died before any symptoms could even develop. Europe's understanding of medicine, based on imbalances of humors and miasmas or bad air, offered no real defense. In the face of this incomprehensible horror, responses varied wildly. Some cities, like Milan, acted decisively, immediately walling up houses where the plague was found, sealing the sick and the healthy inside together to die. It was brutal, but it largely spared the city. In the port city of Ragusa, now Dubrovnik, officials pioneered a visionary policy. They forced all incoming ships and travelers to wait on a nearby island for 40 days before they could enter the city. They called it Trentino, and later Quarantino, the origin of our modern quarantine. It worked, dramatically limiting their losses. But elsewhere, authorities dismissed warnings or acted too slowly, and their inaction amplified the catastrophe. As the plague swept across the continent, social hierarchies that had stood for centuries began to crack. With up to half the population gone in some areas, labor became a scarce and valuable commodity. In England, Surviving peasants and laborers found themselves with newfound leverage. They demanded higher wages and better conditions. When the government tried to freeze wages with the Statute of Laborers in 1351, it sparked widespread resentment and resistance, contributing to the peasants' revolt decades later. The feudal system, which bound peasants to the land, was strained to the breaking point. Not everywhere was affected equally. Some regions, like Poland and parts of Bohemia, remained relatively isolated and were spared the worst of the devastation. Isolated communities in the mountains or remote islands like Iceland also escaped largely untouched. Their distance offered a fragile shield, but for most of Europe, there was no escape. By 1348, the Sienese chronicler Agnolo di Tura wrote of his experience in heartbreaking detail. I, Agnolo di Tura, buried my 5 children with my own hands, and so many died that all believed it was the end of the world. By 1350, the first and most vicious wave of the Black Death had passed, reaching as far as the Arctic Circle. It left a transformed world in its wake. Entire villages had vanished from the map. Forests began to reclaim abandoned fields and settlements. The very atmosphere changed, as the reduction in human activity led to a surge in tree growth, a change so significant it left a mark in ice cores that scientists can still study today. Humanity had survived, but the world it returned to was irrevocably different. The plague was not a one-time event. It returned in waves for centuries. Modern science has confirmed its legacy. Excavations of plague pits, like the one at Charterhouse Square in London, have revealed tens of thousands of skeletons layered one on top of another. DNA sequencing from the teeth of these victims has identified the same Yersinia pestis bacterium that originated in Central Asia. The Black Death was more than just a disease. It was a historical turning point. It accelerated the end of the Middle Ages and paved the way for the Renaissance. It weakened the power of the old feudal nobility and the church, while empowering common people and fueling the rise of a wage-based economy. It was a brutal, terrifying force of nature that exposed the fragility of civilization and the interconnectedness of the world. What began with a single, silent fleet of ships in a Sicilian harbor became a storm that no army, government, or king could stop. It serves as a stark reminder from history. In our modern, even more connected world, the lesson is unmistakable. When the next perfect pathogen emerges, our interconnectedness can be both our greatest strength and our most profound vulnerability. The story of the Black Death is a story of how quickly our world can change, and why we must never forget the lessons of the past. One ghost ship in 1347 nearly ended us. One flight tomorrow could finish the job. Subscribe to History is not done with us right now, because the past is still hunting. Drop a comment telling me which plague we rip open next. Episode 2 drops in 7 days. Don't wait, jump in now, before it's too late. Days. Do it before it's too late.
Subscribe today. Click the button.